I'm not sure if there's a summer flower more iconic than the sunflower. It's a bright and cheery pop of color that so beautifully reflects the summer season, and it's easily recognizable by most everyone, whether you know flowers or not. Personally, I feel sunflowers make a great addition to any cutting garden. But just like in the zinnia video that I shared earlier this week, I know a lot of growers overlook this flower simply because of its simplicity to grow. And if that's you, if you've written off sunflowers as being too basic, well then I hope this video will cause you to do a double take. The simple truth is that sunflowers make a great cut flower. And that's why in this video I plan to share what exactly about them makes them so indispensable for us here at Two Sisters Flower Farm. So let's get right to it. Believe it or not, sunflowers were never a flower that I intended to love. I remember planning for my first flower garden back in 2019, and I had dreams of filling it with more unique treasures like dahlias or even sort of high-end spring flowers, things that really catch your attention like ranunculus and tulips. Despite not being gifted with a naturally green thumb, I remember naively thinking that growing flowers would be a breeze. I didn't want to mess around with the beginner type flowers. No, I wanted to move straight on to the more advanced stuff. So sunflowers just weren't on my radar. Not surprisingly, I failed at growing a lot of things that first year back in 2019, and I remember reluctantly throwing a pack of sunflower seeds into one of the many rows in my garden that just didn't turn out. I wanted to say that I had grown something, anything successfully that year. And sunflowers, with only needing about 60 days to grow and mature, well, they were about the only flowers that would grow quick enough for me to get a harvest from them. Of course, thanks to their ease of growth, the sunflowers did grow to maturity that year. In the seasons that followed, sunflowers sort of became my saving grace in the garden. Especially in those early seasons, I often had plans for my flower garden that were way bigger than I was able to execute on. Anytime I underestimated the time or the work it would take to fill a garden of the size that I wanted to, when I would feel frustrated by my own inexperience, I knew that I could just pop a bunch of sunflower seeds in the ground to sort of make up for everything that I was falling behind on. Sunflowers, because they're so easy to grow, that's definitely an appealing characteristic. But what really sold me on them was their versatility when it came to selling them. Let's be honest, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. For me, I had no clue how wrong I was to assume that selling mixed bouquets of the flowers that I had grown would be easy. I truthfully thought I would just crank out bouquets. But building beautiful bouquets was not a skill that came naturally to me. Building bouquets of any kind was surprisingly time-consuming for me. But I had this aha moment when I realized that while the sunflowers would make great additions to the mixed bouquets I was trying to create, they'd also work great on their own. And I had success selling straight bunches of sunflowers alongside a smaller number of mixed bouquets that I had designed. The fact that sunflowers worked great both on their own and mixed with other flowers, it really helped me to find success in those beginning years of selling flowers when I was just trying to stay afloat. Looking back, I really do think that sunflowers were the training wheels I needed for growing and selling flowers successfully. Thanks to our long history together, I am much more appreciative of how much sunflowers add to my flower farming business, and I'm much more intentional now in making sure I have a crop of them growing in our summer cutting garden. Now, in case you're still not convinced to give sunflowers a try, I will say that with an increasing number of varieties available, sunflowers can really be a specialty flower. Not all sunflower varieties are that traditional dark center with bright yellow petals that your customers may be used to seeing. Some of my favorite sunflower varieties hardly look like sunflowers at all. And here are just a few examples. The Pro Cut Plum features a non-traditional combination of cream mixed with dusty rose. For whatever reason, this variety often reminds me of strawberry lemonade. It's a subtle yet elevated take on summer. The Pro Cut Gold Light is easily one of my favorite sunflower varieties. Its bright yellow petals balance beautifully with an equally bright green center. Nothing says summer to me quite like these Pro Cut Gold sunflowers. Of all the varieties that I'll share today, Pro Cut Gold is the one we grow the most of here at Two Sisters Flower Farm. This Double Quick sunflower is a frilly, fun variety that is definitely more of a novel take on the traditional sunflower. Its long, sort of stringy petals look a bit like fringe that so neatly surrounds a beautifully bright center. I love this variety for how it adds a bit of fun and a bit of whimsy to our arrangements. The Pro Cut Bicolor is the perfect transition into fall, and I especially love growing this variety late in the season as it pairs well with a number of fall flowers. The petals of this variety sort of have an ombre effect. They start as a golden yellow color that progresses to a much more rich brown as you move closer to its dark center. The Pro Cut Red is an especially striking deep reddish color that you wouldn't expect to find with sunflowers. Its petals are a deep burgundy, and I really appreciate how rich of a red this variety is. It definitely leans toward being much more of a rich chocolatey type color than a bright rose-like color. For a more standard looking sunflower, we do grow plenty of Pro Cut Orange sunflowers. These are your traditional yellow petaled flowers with a dark brown center. Again, because I'm such a fan of the gold light sunflowers, I will grow the Pro Cut Oranges later in the season as I feel like they pair well, especially with the bicolor sunflowers. Now this is only a small sample of the sunflowers available to grow. As you can sort of get a feel with just these few examples, sunflowers come in a wide range of shape and color. You can really experience a lot of variety while just growing a single type of flower. Now I do want to give you a few considerations to think about when growing sunflowers yourself. The first being that variety matters. As a cut flower farmer, it's important to us that our customers have a good experience with our flowers. Sunflowers that shed a lot of pollen as they age, that's not something that we want for our customers, and so we grow pollenless sunflower varieties. The Pro Cut varieties specifically tend to be what we stick with. There are other great pollenless varieties available, and a quick Google search should be able to help you identify those. The type of sunflower you're planting as well matters. Sunflowers fit one of two categories, either branching or single stem. Branching sunflowers, as their name implies, send up multiple blooms that branch off a single stem, and they can get quite large, so they'll need more room to grow in your garden. Single stem sunflowers, on the other hand, are just that. They're a single stem that produces just one bloom per seed. We grow all single stem varieties here at Two Sisters, as I much prefer how straight of stems that I get from these plants. With single stem varieties especially, the spacing of your plants will affect the size of your blooms. We plant all of our sunflowers tightly together, leaving just 4 to 6 inches between plants, as this produces sunflowers with smaller bouquet-sized blooms. Allowing more space between your single stem sunflowers means that your blooms will likely be larger. You know, spacing them 12 inches or more apart will often give you dinner plate sized blooms. While all of these flowers would be beautiful, the larger blooms are often harder to work into mixed bouquets, so it's just something to keep in mind as you're planning your garden. Like I said, with the single stem sunflowers, you receive just one bloom per seed, and so to maintain a continual harvest of sunflowers, we succession plant ours all season long. Now you can learn more about the strategy behind succession planting in this video here, and I'll link it in the description box below. But we plant our first succession of sunflowers as soon as all the dangers of frost have passed, which for us here in Zone 5B means our first planting usually takes place in mid-May. Sunflowers are quick growing, so I much prefer to direct sow our seeds right into the ground. And I plant a new planting of sunflowers every 7 to 10 days, starting in mid-May and going all the way through to about mid-August, which for us is about 60 days prior to our first autumn frost. Planting later than mid-August means I likely won't get a harvest from my plants, as my sunflowers won't have enough time to grow and mature before the frost takes them out. Now you'll have to do some math to figure out the best planting window for you based on your growing conditions. but figure that most single stem varieties will mature in just 55 to 60 days. Now I know for some growers they much prefer to sow their seeds in cell trays and then plant their transplants out as they grow larger, and that strategy can work well. Just a word of caution that sunflowers, they do grow much faster than most other seeds that you'd plant into a tray, so you have to stay on top of your transplanting schedule. Now here you can see how quickly sunflowers can become a leggy and tangly mess. These sunflowers were left in this tray about a week too long, and I was a bit more lax with my grow light setup, which resulted in sunflower starts that were anything but straight. Now, did these eventually straighten out? Well, yes. As you can see here, once outside, these sunflower plants, they did grow to have their normal straight stems, but they were a pain to have to untangle as I was planting them. Of all the flowers that you can start in trays, I personally think that sunflowers are one of the least forgiving varieties when you leave them too long. While sunflowers may be high maintenance in a cell tray, they are low maintenance in the field. Other than requiring full sun, sunflowers aren't fussy about much else. For instance, when it comes to water and irrigation, sunflowers are rather drought tolerant. While you'll want to make sure that you water your sunflowers at planting to get them started, they'll likely do just fine with an occasional rain from Mother Nature. Now, we treat all of our flower beds here the same in our garden, so everything gets covered in either landscape fabric or plastic mulch. But I will say that a weed barrier isn't something that I would consider necessary for sunflowers. These flowers are so quick growing that they can easily outpace any weeds that sprout. Even when weeds pop up in our sunflower beds, I don't bother pulling them, as I know they'll be shaded out by the sunflowers as our plants get larger. If you are growing sunflowers without weed barrier and you want to direct sow your seeds easily, you may find an earthway seeder handy. Now, I picked up this earthway seeder for a great deal off of Facebook Marketplace, and I have found it to be useful as it easily allows me to plant a couple hundred sunflower seeds in just a few minutes. I used this earthway seeder much more frequently when I was planting sunflowers in larger volumes a few years back. When I sold a higher volume of our flowers through our roadside stand, I used to plant thousands of sunflower seeds each week. Now that our focus is on hosting You Pick Flower experiences, I find that I only really need a couple hundred sunflowers blooming, which I find easy enough to handle by direct sowing by hand. If you're not planting into any sort of weed barrier though, the earthway seeder can help you plant quickly while also allowing you to remain upright, something I pay much more attention to the older I get. If you have an earthway seeder, you may be familiar with the different plate sizes that come with your seeder, and unless the seeder has changed since I purchased it, it does not come with a specific sunflower seed plate. I worked around this by using this plate, and I taped every other hole to give me the plant spacing that I wanted. You may have to mess with your seeder to get your desired spacing, but it's really not difficult to figure out. However you decide to plant your sunflowers, the one complaint that I often hear from other growers is that birds or hungry bunnies or squirrels will nibble at sunflower starts. I feel fortunate that this isn't an issue for us, but I know how frustrating it is to feel as though your hard work is going to waste. I have a flower farming friend that will cover her freshly planted sunflower beds with a light frost cloth to allow her seeds enough time to get rooted in without interruptions from small pests. By giving her seedlings a chance to get rooted in, the plants are better able to anchor themselves, and she removes the frost cloth once the seedlings are about 3 to 4 inches tall. While it does add an extra step to your sunflower planting, it may be worth the effort to ensure that your blooms make it to harvest. So once established, your only other concern is knowing when to harvest your blooms. For longest vase life and to prevent petals from becoming damaged as you're arranging with them or transporting them to your customers, I harvest our sunflowers when the first petals are starting to unfurl from the center. I'll strip the leaves right in our field and then make a deep, long cut. Remember, single stem sunflowers will give you just one bloom, so take as much or as little of the stem with you as you'd like. You certainly can offer sunflowers that are a bit more open to your customers, but be sure to note that your blooms are still concave. When your flower petals start to reflex back, you notice the heads of your flowers drooping downwards, Your sunflowers are truly at the end of their lifespan, and these flowers likely won't last long. I encourage you to include your stems in a beautiful mixed bouquet or wrap them together in craft paper and offer them as straight bunches. I mean, that's really all there is to it. I'd love to know in the comments below whether or not you grow sunflowers, and if you do, I'd love for you to share some of your favorite varieties. I'm always looking for new ones to add to my own cutting garden. Well, that is all from me. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today as we deep dive into the world of sunflowers. As always, I'd truly appreciate if you let me know if you enjoyed the information in this video by giving it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button below as well if you haven't already. I can't wait to come back and deep dive into a new and different flower variety. In the meantime, if you want to learn more on all things related to zinnias, I'll actually link that video here in the end card, and I hope you'll join me there. Bye guys.